you this evening to the SOS Candidate Forum Series. Early voting begins March 22nd. We'd like to remind everybody of that, 2021, through April 5th at your local polling places. Check where to vote at www.cookcountyclerk.com or vote on Election Day on April 6, 2021. This is the event itinerary. So we'll start with the welcome, which we just did. We're going to tell you a little bit about SOS next after reading the itinerary. We will get into the forum ground rules of engagement. After that, following that, there's the introduction of candidates, explanation of questioning procedures. After that, with pre-event, during event, and SOS questionnaire questions. The candidate form will begin after that point. Candidate closing remarks after we complete the questioning session and discussion. The form closing for SOS hosts will come after that. We do need you to know that number 5, the pre-event, during event, and SOS questionnaire questions are the body of questions that we will present tonight. What is SOS and what is its current purpose? SOS is a grassroots group whose purpose is to promote a community that is informed, educated, and activated to ensure a well-educated, empowered electorate that will utilize the power of the vote to place into office well-vetted and qualified government officials who understand that they are in office as public participants to well serve their electorate. These are the rules of engagement. Candidates must arrive on time to participate in the forum. Late arrivals will not be admitted. There will be an opportunity for everyone to log on up to 15 minutes before the forum start time. Candidates will be required to have their video camera on with full view of their person or face, as there will be participants with visual auditory challenges that are hearing impaired and lip read. Audience and/or candidates should mute their microphone while others are speaking. Audience members should have their first and last name displayed on their video frame. If assistance is needed to modify the display name, alert the host verbally or through the chat function. Please be respectful, polite, and courteous to everyone present during the forum. Please tell us your name before you ask the candidates a question, preferably with your video camera on during the interaction. Please speak in clear, normal voice volumes throughout the forum so that everyone may hear and understand your communications. As there will be participants with visual auditory challenges that are hearing impaired and lip read, please make certain you follow directions rules of the proper decorum to the best of your ability. Under no circumstances will disruptive, rude, accusatory, or otherwise demeaning behaviors be tolerated. Participants behaving this way will be removed and not allowed to re-enter the event. Ask one question at a time. If you have multiple questions, please type them into the chat so that we can get them answered after everyone else has had their chance to ask one question. SOS will decide if follow-up is necessary. The introduction of the candidates. Well, welcome and thank you for coming. Rich Township High School District 227 is having an election to elect its board members. And the following are people who responded by stepping up and saying, we want to run for that position. They are Andre Allen, Jameer Atkins, a write-in, Janice Preston, up for re-election, Mia Carter, up for re-election, Marla Johnson, a write-in, Dr. Quintella Bonds, Shagman Lowry, Sharon Newman, up for re-election, and Tiffany Taylor. Can we go back? Candidates who chose to complete the SOS candidate questionnaire, to which all candidates were invited via mail, will have a special dispensation, and we'll talk about that momentarily. SOS questionnaire respondents were Jameer Atkins, Dr. Quintella Bounds, Marla Johnson. These three candidates who chose to complete and submit the SOS questionnaire by the deadline will receive 1 additional minute for every opportunity to speak during this forum, and will be first in line to answer questions, alternating between the three candidates. So we'll start with, say, Jameer Atkins, the first question. The second question, we'll start with Dr. Quintella Bonds. The third question, we'll start with Marla Johnson, and we'll rotate back and forth out of that pattern for them. Otherwise, we will call out the person's name after selecting them out of the box. Holly Fingerly will assist there. And once she calls, she will let you know that you have 2 minutes to answer. The respondents who answered the questionnaire will get 3 minutes.
Connie?
Yes.
Gina, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like just Mia Carter would be the only person in the bowl. So we've got the 3 that responded and then Mia. So we've got 4 candidates total. Is that correct, Gina?
I'm just checking the participant list at the moment. Yes, you're correct.
So we won't need to use the bowl, Connie. It's just Mia will come after those that filled out our candidate questionnaire in advance.
All right, and she gets 2 minutes rather than 3. Thank you. So the pool of questions we explained earlier, There are 3 pools. Questions from SOS candidate questionnaire, pre-event questions, none were submitted, so we won't be pulling from that pool tonight. And live event questions that are submitted during this virtual Zoom activity. Okay.
So now we'll make sure to spotlight whoever is speaking. That way we'll see their screen bigger. And Connie, you can proceed.
Okay. So the first question is, we'd like each of you to have an opportunity, that's a 3-minute opportunity, to tell us about yourselves. So we're going to start with Jameer Atkins. Jameer?
Yes, hello. I first and foremost want to thank SOS for this opportunity this Saturday afternoon. I know there's a lot of things that they could be doing, but I appreciate the opportunity to Holly, to Connie, and Gina and Lynn as well. A little bit about me. I am a proud Rich Township resident for all of my life, all 32 years, except when I went away to school. I lived here in Rich Township. I grew up in Park Forest. I graduated from Rich East High School in 2007. I was always, I actually got my footing and my experience and exposure to student politics and student council at Rich East. Coming in as a freshman, I had been in private school prior to that. And so Rich East was my first public school experience. And I came in and I had a great experience. And Rich Township did a lot for me as far as a student. A lot don't know, but I experienced my mother passed 3 weeks before I graduated. And so Rich Township had a special place in my heart because at that current time, the superintendent and the Board of Education supported me because I had been a good student in this district. Bring it full term ahead, 10 years later or so, I went on to become, been in sales for the last 10 years, sales and marketing, and I've been involved directly with the district for the last 5 years, and been involved with many conversations from the consolidation of schools to us appointing a new superintendent to establishing organizations. The Booster Club at Richie's High School, I pioneered that effort. And so I've been very committed to the work of education reform. I currently serve with State Rep Anthony DeLuca on his Education Advisory Council, where we work on legislation and advocacy work on education reform in the state of Illinois and how it affects not just Rich Township, but the entire district. And I look forward to the conversation tonight, and you'll get to learn more about me as we continue this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jameer. Dr. Quintella Bounds would be next up.
Well, I first want to thank SOS for this opportunity, for allowing me to share my platform with your constituents and your members. A little bit about myself. My name is Dr. Quintella Bounds. I have lived in the Southland area for 40 years and 20 years in the Rich Township community, which I've been here. I have I have 3 children, but 2 have actually graduated and gone through the Rich Township 227 school district. I am married, wonderful husband, and 2 beautiful dogs. So that's my family life. I am an educator who has the calling of being an educator. I started teaching because my son asked me one day if I could come and read to the kids in his kindergarten classroom. And since then, I've loved teaching in a classroom. But he was actually identified with a disability around the 3rd grade. And I felt that I didn't get the educational knowledge on his disability while we were going through the process. So I took a couple classes at Governor State, which led me to complete my master's. I have a bachelor's in business, a master's in special education, and a doctorate in special education leadership. So I am through and through a SPED teacher. I've worked in the classroom. I've been a case manager. I've been a team leader. I've done everything in education you can think of. I've also worked as a director of special education and as an assistant clinical professor at both Governor State and Chicago State University. I am an educator, a parent, and a community member who has some grave concerns and who wants to provide her expertise to a board that I feel that can use what I can offer. So that's the reason that I'm actually running for this position. And I've served the community. I serve on the Council for Exceptional Children, which is a national organization for special education. I also have served as the president and president-elect for the Division for Culturally Linguistic and Diverse Learners, and the CASE, which is Council of Administrators for Special Education, and also the international level. So I am through and through vetted in special education, and that's where my passion lies, and it's with the students in the community. I've also served on the Matson Bears as their secretary, board secretary, and coach.
All right, that's your time. Thank you so much. You've got a lot of accomplishments, so it's hard to put them all in.
Yes.
All right, let me see. Where is Miss Marla? There she is. All right, Miss Marla Johnson, go right ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I also would like to thank SOS for hosting this. This is such a meaningful conversation that we must continue to have even after this election, and I'm hopeful that we will. I am Marla Johnson. I like to call myself the homegrown candidate. I was born and raised in Matson, Illinois, started preschool at Mayo Church, then went up through District 162 and graduated from 227. I am a product of the public education system, which is why I'm simply so passionate about it. I am a higher education professional. I started my higher ed tenure in enrollment services at Prairie State, then went into TRIO, which services students from a low income, first generation, and students with disabilities. I provide resources for them, academic counseling, and also wraparound services. I must say it was when I became an academic advisor that I really started to see the inequities in education. And I knew that something had to be done. And that is when I knew I had to step up. I always like to say, I am not new to this. I am true to this. I've been a part of a student council in both elementary school and in high school. I went on to serve in the Student Government Association at my university as well. So I've always been involved. And I believe at this point in our education system, we must lead, and we must lead by example. I believe that service and sovereignty, and that is why I have decided to step up. A lot of people ask me, well, you don't have kids in the district, why are you doing it? I work with our students each and every day. I serve as a regional admissions counselor for the University of Illinois Springfield, where my territory covers the southern suburbs, western suburbs, as well as parts of Chicago. So I'm speaking with students every day and their parents every day, and I'm hearing the issues that they're facing. I know what's going on in the school system. As I said, I was an academic advisor in the secondary education field. So I've also had that other side. I've had the secondary education and post-secondary. Another reason why I'm running is because I see where our students go after they graduate. I think one thing we have to focus on, especially with being on a school board, we say we get our students to college, but that's not it. We want to know, what are they doing after college? And how we really measure that is by following the student. And that is one of the main reasons why I knew I had to run, because I am very big on data. And if we look at where our students are going after they leave our halls, it's not that we can't get them to college. We have an issue with getting them through college. And that is something that we have to address. And by being on the higher education side, that's something that I know I can bring to the table, and I'm passionate about it. I serve at the state level, and I will continue to serve constituents here in the district if elected.
Thank you so much, Marla. Let me try to find Miss Mia Carter. Here you are. Mia, if you're there, if you can put on your camera. Where are you?
Is it on?
There she is. Yes, let me put the spotlight on you. There we go.
Hi, everybody. No, I'm a little under the weather, and I have had some medication, but I wanted to join you guys tonight. My name is Mia Carter. I am running for re-election to my seat on 227. I am a Park Forest resident, been out in Park Forest for 25 plus years. I work for the village of Matheson in the community policing department. So we pretty much work with kids all day, 40 hours a week. We're primarily a school-based unit. I've enjoyed living out here in the Southland. I have a son that is a junior at the FAT campus this year. I ran 4 years ago, really at the request of a friend. He told me, you're so community oriented, you kind of know a lot about what's going on with kids, you'd be great for the school board. So that's why I ran the first time. And to be honest with you, it was difficult, it was trying. I lost my faith in what I was doing for quite a bit, and I wanted to quit. But then I had to realize why I was doing it. If I really am going to be committed to change, I can't run when things get hard. I have to figure out how to continue to work. I mean, that's my job. I try to fix things. So when I started to focus on what really being a board member meant, and some of the things that we were able to accomplish despite a lot of the drama that went on, we were able to to make some amazing changes. I see a vision of this district that will make us a premier in the South suburbs. I believe in that in my heart. The villages around this school are growing. We are building. We are better, and we need a better school. So I ask for your vote to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia. All right, that concludes our candidate introductions. Connie?
Can't hear you.
Yep, just unmute yourself, Connie. There you go.
Okay, do we have any, are we getting questions into the, from the residents and from the voters?
Not at this time.
Okay, so I'm going to proceed on, and when we build that block of questions, just stop me at any time and we can go off into the community questions.
Nope,
So
sure.
each of you will have an opportunity to answer the following question. Tell us your views on transparency in government, community involvement, participation in decision-making, accountability reporting to your constituents, and accessibility to your public. So that's 4 areas: transparency in government, community involvement / participation in decision-making, accountability reporting to your constituents, accessibility to your public. The first 3 of you have 3 minutes to answer that question. Mia, you'll have 2. We will start with Dr. Quintella Bounds.
Well, thank you for giving me this first opportunity. So as far as being accessibility, most school districts provide their board members with cell phones, emails, address. I feel that the board should be provided, the public should have access to those cell phones as well as the emails. And I do see on the website, constituents do have access to the emails. So if the district is paying for those cell phone bills, they should also be provided. So you should be accessible. Secondly, as far as transparency, because the board of, the education is basically financed or by the community, at least 78% of our dollars come from our community tax-paying dollars, then yes, there has to be transparency. Without the transparency, that leads to the eye of suspect and suspicion. Perfect examples, I know that you have access to the report cards. That data should be publicly. So when we say our district is doing great things and our district is doing wonderful, we also have to tell the true story. We've got to tell where are we and how are we with our students' academic and social emotional growth. That story has to be told. That is the duty of the educational system, is to provide academic supports and to make our students prepared for life. So they should be able to read, write, and do arithmetic. And if they're failing in that area, that should be known by the entire community. It should be talked about in every board meeting. So I am thoroughly for transparency. Secondly, community involvement is #1 key. I remember when Dr. Leek was the superintendent, Dr. Leek was huge on policy committees where they were held after hours, community was involved. You had your policy committee, you had your finance committees, and our community was able to come to these meetings. Now I hear that it's a committee of the whole, but we have to FOIA the information. It's our dollars. Let's share that information. Let's be transparent.
Thank
And
you.
the one that, So you kind of covered community involvement in your last answer, and I want people to know that as you spoke about the committees to do input. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Same question, and I'll read it again. The four areas are transparency in government, community involvement / participation in decision-making, accountability reporting to your constituents, and accessibility to your public. And next to answer that would be Marla Johnson. Marla?
I'll mute myself. So yes, so for the first thing, transparency. We have to insist on transparency from our elected officials. They are public servants, they serve us. So we should be able to cross-check what they are doing and when they are doing it and how they are doing it. For accountability, I truly believe that if you are a true leader, you want those who are following you and who you represent to know how to hold you accountable. You want to provide them with the resources to be able to cross-check what you have going on. That's what accountability is. They should have access to that. They shouldn't have to go search through a website. They shouldn't have to FOIA information. You should be the one posting the information on different websites, on your social media. These are things that we have to move towards if we are truly trying to be transparent, if we're truly trying to say that we're accessible to our constituents. The next one is community involvement. At this point, we are at a point in all of our communities that things are changing. We see that we are seeing it on TV. We're seeing it in our hallways. So we have to go back to the start of a student's education, and that starts in the home, and that's built in, through the community. We have to build meaningful relationships with one another. We have to reach out to one another to truly build the full student and to truly build our communities, because it's only collectively that we're going to move forward. And the last one, I have my notes of the last one. The last one is, I covered accessibility. I think I covered them all. Community involvement as well. I do believe that in the schools, we should be the ones building the bridge for community involvement. I do know that we have some committees, but why aren't those minutes accessible? We should be able to know what conversations are happening in those. That is true community involvement. Community involvement isn't choosing specific constituents who are able to access information. It's allowing the majority to come in and have those conversations and to evaluate the effectiveness and efficientness of conversation. So when we look at that, I think we need to do just some deep dives into truly what we define transparency, how we define accessibility and accountability and community involvement. That's the only way we're going to move forward at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next will be Jameer Atkins, and I will review those 4 points again. Transparency in government, community involvement / participation in decision-making, accountability reporting to your constituents, accessibility to your public. Jameer, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, so I think I got it. Okay, so real quick, so transparency in government, as you guys have known that I am a proponent for transparency in government. One of the things that I have discussed in the past is developing a town hall tour where we actually partner with our feeder school districts and we partner with the community at large and move around within our community to make sure that we are actually coming to the community, because sometimes we have meetings, and we used to do this a couple years back, where we actually move from different campuses. So I am a very strong proponent for the transparency in governance, because I believe we, the board of education, held accountable our constituents, and we have to report to them to talk about accountability and reporting. We have to report back to them what we're doing. So after every board meeting, it will be, if I'm elected, I will make sure that there is a monthly update that goes out and let them know what my voting power did and how it affected the policies and procedures in the district, both in 227 and the community at large, with that partnership of me putting out information and how I voted moved us in this direction and how it affected others. Also, community engagement, big proponent of it. I echo some sentiments that have already been spoken. I would, if afforded, I will move from committee of the whole to having individual committees that actually support financing, that actually support strategic planning, that actually supports and gives oversight and gives power back to the people. Because when you build the trust and the rapport with the people, you don't have to worry about any lacks in communication. Because if the people feel empowered and that you have effectively communicated, then you will never have to worry about the rapport or the channels of communications being broken. And then accountability report, and I kind of touched on that as far as accountability when it comes to now why I voted this, how it affected, good, bad, or indifferent. Accountability. FOIA should be one thing, but we should understand that if we have a strong strategic marketing plan and we're able, our user friendliness of our website, because a lot of information is on our website, but we have to make sure that it's user friendly. We have to make sure that we are exercising our PR department that we have, and also our marketing firm that we're paying for. We have to make sure that we use them to the best of our ability. And I think right now we have the tools in place, but they're not being used at their best ability because they're not really fundamentally put in a strategic plan. And I think that covers all four. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jameer. And lastly, on this question, we have Mia Carter. Mia Carter, I'm going to review the 4 areas again: transparency in government, community involvement / participation in decision-making, accountability reporting to your constituents, and accessibility to your public.
Okay. You know, as I was thinking about that question and listening, I think if we became a strong community-focused school, we would actually be able to address all of these concerns without issue. You know, our communication has not been the best. Our accessibility has not been the best. Community involvement wasn't the best. We had some work to do, and we've taken some steps towards these things, but we have to continue. So I'll give you some for instances. As far as accessibility, when you said that, I actually think of not only me being accessible to the public, but our superintendent, our teachers, our staff. Everybody has to have a level of accessibility to the public, to the parents, to each other. You know, so I feel like as a board member, I've been accessible, but I do think if we improved our communications on every level, we would do something about accessibility. Transparency, that's one of those things that I had to learn about what to ask so that I know if my administration was being transparent. Hope that makes sense. You know, it's a learning process, you know, learning how to be a board member, learning what's required, what should I be asking for, what should I be demanding, you know, things like that. I believe we've done a better job at being transparent. It was a little touchy in the beginning, but I think we've improved. But I always say we can always be better. We can always be better at what we do. We just got to be committed to it. We have to believe that it's important. We have to believe that a community-focused school is important, because if we did, community involvement would improve. From the businesses, from the parents, from the community member. If you guys don't trust us, your involvement is not going to be the same. So until we start rebuilding that trust and becoming community focused, we will never be where we're supposed to be.
All right, that ends your time. Thank you so much.
Thank
Mia.
you.
So much. Thank you so much. The next question, do we have a question in hello?
Yes, we have one. Let me see.
From the community?
Yep.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, so this question comes from Lynn Farmer. She asks, how has the pandemic impacted education, and how will you help resume normalcy?
So we will start that question. Marla Johnson is first on that question. Marla?
So the pandemic has shifted how we educate students in a variety of ways. Working in higher education, recruiting our students, this has really had some detrimental effects on them. And we are truly going to have to work together to kind of build them back up because they've lost a lot. Whether we realize it or not, we are all going through our own things, but students who are supposed to be developing socially, who are supposed to truly be in classrooms, interacting firsthand, they have not had that. And we also have to understand that because of the inequities in education, that really has shaken a lot of the Black and Brown communities. I am very happy that our district is a one-to-one when in regards to having access to electronics, having access to Wi-Fi. I'm very proud of that, and I congratulate and thank the district for having that accessible. But we have to understand that moving forward, we're never really going to go back to how things used to be. We're going to have to truly come up with a new norm, and that is really going to start with speaking with our students and our teachers. Our teachers have to feel supported and respected with moving forward in how we are going to re-engage our students, because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a re-engagement back into learning in a classroom. We are going to have to truly shift our minds of what we thought education was, because we are never going to go back completely back to how things were. And the faster we accept that, the easier it will be to move forward. Now, personally, as I stated, I work with students every day, trying to get them on Zoom. They have Zoom fatigue, but like I said, I think if we really focus on that re-engagement and that partnership between the district, we must reach out to our students and see how can we build your interest back up? What do you want to see coming back to school? What will make you feel safe? And then we have to speak to our teachers. We know that the teachers are really our champions in our school, and we must respect them, and we must know that they're the experts, and we have to trust them, and we have to move forward in that.
Thank you very much. Same question to Jameer Atkins.
Yeah, so I would say that we do. I think the first thing is to get back to normalcy. We have to understand that hybrid learning and asynchronous learning is not going away. I think it is something of the future in 21st century teaching. I think in other countries, they have already had an advancement towards this. But what we have to understand, we do have students that need more wraparound services. And so we have to partner with our SPED department. We have to partner and find out how we can provide those wraparound services for students who are more at high risk, right? And once we figure that out, then we can have a more meaningful conversation with students that are at our regular trajectory or are what we would call our advanced students. Because one thing in 227, we have a high propensity of students that academically struggle. When they brought the Star Academy out, that was one thing they brought out. The one thing that I did not like about the Star Academy is that it only serves 160 kids. But I think that we could have done more investment in teachers that make sure that we have a more robust program. And so the reason I bring that up is I will go back to the teachers. I will go back to the staff. I will go back to the faculty and the community at large and take people that are retired educators, take people who are abreast in research and data, and find someone who's been having this conversation and bring it back so that we can move forward in an upward trajectory to make sure that our students get the best opportunities that they can have and bring it back to normalcy, because normalcy will not be normal anymore. It will be developing a new digital normalcy and how we educate our kids and how we help them have the discipline so that they can make sure that they can keep abreast with the e-learning and making sure because I don't think we will ever go back. I like the hybrid model. I like that, but I understand with everyone's situation is very unique. So we need to have a committee that is built up to have that meaningful conversation.
Thank you. Dr. Quintella Bounds.
Can you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Read the question, Gina. It's in the chat.
Yes. Let me see. Let me give you the spotlight. Okay, so the question is, how has the pandemic impacted education, and how will you help resume normalcy?
So how the pandemic has actually impacted education is, first, it says in every board policy, the Illinois Association of School Boards has in their policy, which every board member should be aware of, there should have been a pandemic plan. What is your plan in case there is a national, global pandemic. Secondly, there has been a social impact on our students. But what we've learned from this impact I can tell you about Rich 227 is that our administration was not prepared. Our board was not asking the correct questions because there's been K through 12 schools that have been totally online. So teachers have been trained on flipping a classroom. We have one-to-one devices. With that one-to-one devices, those teachers should have been for the last 10 years flipping a classroom, especially in the higher ed. I'm sorry, in the high school environment. So if we have the equipment, the plan should have been to students go home and we work remotely. That should have been in place. It should not have been something foreign to us. Because it's impacting us, it's telling us that our current board was not properly asking the correct questions, and our administration was and had never prepared for what if we need to go virtually for any reason, whether 50 minutes, a class period, or for a full year.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Next will be Mia Carter. Mia?
Yes, ma'am. I'm watching in my chat this time for my time.
Yes, thank you. I should have announced before, but yes, I am private direct messaging you for 1 minute, 30
Okay.
seconds, and 10 seconds.
Thank you. The pandemic. Well, I have an e-learner right now at home that is not doing well with the e-learning. It has definitely been a struggle. And I say that without getting overly emotional because it's hard. It's not only hard on the kids, it's hard on the parents. If I didn't have the type of job where I could take off work and e-learn with my kid, it would have been disastrous. But I had that flexibility to do that, and so many parents don't. The other candidates are right. It's going to change how we educate because I think now we realize how we need to be more flexible and what we need to do to make sure every kid is met where they're at. And it was a struggle, but I do believe it got better. Lastly, I want to tell you, I have a truancy intervention grant through my job where I go in the homes. I've been in almost 60 plus homes of kids who are having truancy issues and not doing right with e-learning. When I tell you the struggle is way more than what you think, that they're hurting. And when they come back to school, we're going to have to make sure that we are meeting their social emotional needs first and education second. These kids are going to be behind. They're going to need focus. They're going to need social support. And we have put some things in place already to address that for when it comes. But that's just my story about the pandemic. It's more than just COVID.
Thank you for your discussion. We have several questions I see in chat.
Yep. Our next one is from Monica Gordon. It is, what ideas or strategies would you implement to increase workforce development opportunities for students as they progress toward high school completion and graduation? Who goes first, Connie?
Marla Johnson, you have the pleasure of going first.
All right, go right ahead. Can you see it in the chat or would you like me to repeat?
I can see it in the chat.
Okay.
So this is a great question, and it is actually it actually speaks to one of my priorities with my campaign, and that is to focus on school, family, and community partnerships. When we talk about workforce development, that boils down to the district and different, whether it be If students want to go into a trade, if they want to go into a specific field, we're building those partnerships with different companies. We're building those partnerships with different local businesses. So we have to do our part in making sure that as a district, we are bridging the gap between community and school to provide those resources to our students, because I know the district has some things going on in regards to growing our own teachers, which is awesome. But we need to have that for a lot more fields. We have a STEM campus now, and we have the fine arts and business campus. We should be looking into more fields, more companies that we can really start honing in on and providing our students with those opportunities. As I mentioned earlier, my region in my territory also covers the western suburbs. So I see the different programming that schools have in the western suburbs. And it really boils down to the meaningful relationships between board members, district administration, and community. And a lot of that starts with when the community is willing to step up, the district has to be willing to engage with the community. I've heard plenty of alum talk about how they've tried to have partnerships within the district, and the district has not been receptive. Those are some things that we must address first. And that's the only way we're going to truly move forward. We cannot pick and choose what programs we want to allot our students. We need to see what programs that our students want to be a part of, and then make sure that we're doing everything we can to provide them with those opportunities. That's the only way we're going to move forward. Also, we need to have meaningful conversations with our community college. Prairie State is a resource right here. I used to work there. I know the amazing things that are going on there. We should have more opportunities for our students through Prairie State as well. And they have a lot of different workforce development opportunities that we should have for our students at 227.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Marla. Next to answer on that is Jameer Atkins.
Yes, so I believe that I look at the Southland as a huge pie. And the reason I do that is because with that analogy, it allows me to say that if we work together, if we unify our efforts, we can be way better for our community. With that being said, I echo some of the same sentiments that we need partnership. We need to bring back vocation and trade. We do have a fine program, a mechanical manufacturing program that was piloted at Ritchie's and a couple years back, and it's done wonders. But we need to make sure that our kids are getting into the IT, that they're getting into data, that they're getting into these fields that are very lucrative. Also, with that being said, we need to look at, we do have the option for military vocation, entrepreneurship, and really working with our feeder schools when they're coming in. If we can start identifying this conversation early on, just as we need to do with other things, I think that we can have a more meaningful conversation long term, because if we are able to identify it early on, we can do some great things for our students. But I think it's quickly identifying and saying, you know what, this is a huge pie, but let me cut off a little piece from here, a little piece from there, a little piece from there, and bring it all together and make sure that our students are the first priority. We have to make sure that we partner and make sure that we bring in those workforce development, that we bring in mom and pop shops. That one thing I know that there was the Amazon program, the engineering program, which is phenomenal. They also did program, the engineering teachers at Loyola. Once the lack of marketing, a lot of people didn't know this, but this is great information to have. But the other thing that came into my mind is we can start early on looking when we brought Pete's, what partnership did the school get with Pete's? Because Pete's is a grocery store, but that could be a good career. What vocational trades, what construction company? We have Ujama, a Black minority owned a subcontractor that's working on our property. I think there may have been conversation, but how do we partner to get our students to go on site and actually look at some of those things? So I think it's something that we have to look at. This a big pie, and we all can have a piece of it, and then we all have to work together collectively and have intergovernmental partnerships and more meaningful conversations that may be uncomfortable to save the long-term trajectory of our students in this community.
Thank you, Dr. Bounds, I'm sorry, I keep
That's
changing
okay.
the name.
So the first thing we should do is we should look at our data. Our 8th graders, when they come in, they complete what's called the Explore exam. On that Explore exam, it tells us basically where that student strength lies. So if we're going to place that student in a vocational program, which Chicago Public Schools did years ago and prior to No Child Left Behind. So if we go back to that mindset, we offer those students vocational programs. The district has already done the IB program, and we have the STEM program. So just looking at the data, allowing our students to tell us what they are interested in. It would be phenomenal if we had a pilot program. I mean, where students can actually take simulations and become a pilot. When my son was 9, he told me he wanted to learn to fly a plane. I took him way out west, and he was learning to fly a plane. How many other children are thinking that same mindset, but has nothing offered in the school? So it also comes to building that communication with our community. How many individuals in our community can come in and volunteer and show our students, you know, if you want to work in the stock market, there should be a program in our school for our children to become brokers. You know, we've got to think outside the box. We can't make everyone an engineer. Someone wants to be a broker. Someone wants to be an attorney. We should have mock court cases going on in school. We've got kids committing all type of incidents. Let's flip it around and put them in charge and make them the judge, the jury, and an attorney. And that's how we bring that in. We've done everything else. We've got to get outside the box, and we've got to think like true educators. Thank you.
Thank you. Mia Carter?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm hanging in there, y'all. Thank you. Workforce development. I can still see the question. I too, and I heard some of the other candidates talk about the importance of workforce development, or also what I like to think of as the non-traditional college-bound student. We will do a disservice to our entire community if we just focus on college-bound. If we don't talk about and focus on the trades, the arts, to Jameer's point, entry-level positions like at a grocery store, partnerships that come through businesses that want tax incentives from us, must give back to our kids. You must, offer them opportunities to learn. We have some great pathways. Kids who are now becoming CNAs and pharmacy techs and certain trades eligible to get certified by the unions once they graduate from high school. There's programs right now where a kid can graduate from high school, get trained in a trade, making $60,000 a year, their first year out of high school with no debt. Now, if I could have went back and did that, I'd have saved myself $120,000. So we have some amazing opportunities, but we have to do more. We always have to do more. You know why? Because the kids change, their interests change, the community change, technology changes. We have to do more. Every year we have to think about what can we do better? What do our kids need? What's working? What's not working? Who's new to the community that we can partner with? We've got to continue to do that. And while we've done okay, we can always do better. We just had to stop fighting ourselves and get back to understanding why we're here. If we are really here for our kids, we don't have to have all that drama. The focus will be on them. And that's what we need to do moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you all. The conversation thus far has centered around great ideas, great minds, things that we know are best practice for board members in education. The current board's position and how it tends to work with its superintendent has been problematic to this community for a while. Tell me a little bit about how you plan to work as a board together to make sure that you are supporting your superintendent, but that your superintendent is in the correct line of this, not the superintendent running the board, but the superintendent being accountable to the board. What are a couple of things, let's take one or two things that you plan to do when you're elected to the board when you sit, how will you reach out to fellow board members to work that problem out? That is a vision that this community has of its board 227. How will you change that and change that paradigm that's currently there on that board? And we're going to start with Jameer Atkins will be the first to answer that question, please.
I think that's a good question for me. So with that being said, I think that the first thing is you have to look at what you're doing. I'm a sales and marketing person, so I look at data. I'm metrics based. I'm a metrics based employee, so I don't look at, I remove emotions and feelings, and I look at the data and see how we're performing. And when you look at the performance, then you build a strategic plan upon your strengths and your weaknesses. You're able to identify where you're strong and where you're weak at. Once you identify your strengths and your weaknesses, then you begin to have meaningful conversations with all stakeholders. So that's community, that's educators, that's pastors, that's everyone that represents your community. And then you build a sound strategic plan that is in-depth in nature. Every successful organization that I know of has a strong business plan, and within that business plan, they have a strong strategic plan. The strategic plan is the Bible to that organization. The strategic plan speaks to when a pandemic happens, how do you navigate those waters? The responsibility of the board is not to manage the day-to-day operations of the district, but at the end of the day-to-day operation stops and starts with the Board of Education. So you have to know, if the board does not approve the money to go out, the superintendent does not have that power. So you have to build a bridge of communication between the superintendent and the Board of Education. You have to hold the superintendent responsible for his actions. You have to have, and the other position that the board hired is the superintendent and the attorney. So you have to have two meaningful people in that role that represent not the best interests of self, but the best interests of 227 and its community stakeholders. And if you don't have that, then you're going to continue to have a rolling effect. We don't need a board of 4 and it gets done. We need a board of 7 that talks things out, that have professional disagreement, but still move in the best trajectory and the upward trajectory for students and community and taxpayers. And the only way I know how to do that is to build a strong strategic plan that supports everything that we do, that supports our marketing, that supports our day-to-day operation, and it also supports when things are done and people have to be disciplined properly. You have policies that are given by the state, and you need to build, and that needs to be inclusive in your strategic plan. And I think if we could do that, I think we can move very, very much forward. And we must keep the conversation ongoing to continue to develop and make that strengthen. And a strategic plan is not done. It's an overview for the next 5 years, but you can always go back and edit it and amend it to meet the needs of the organization as it grows or deteriorates.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Bounds?
Okay, I was unmuting myself. Okay, all right. So according to the board policy 2:20, the board's role and the board's duties are to create a strategic plan, a mission, and a vision. The board of 7 supervises one individual, and that one individual is the superintendent of the schools. The superintendent of the school then runs the day-to-day operation. What does that look like and how it should look like according to the Illinois Association of School Boards is we create as board members our strategic plan. It should be done with community input. It should be done with community involvement. Once that's done and the vision is set, the superintendent is allowed to perform the duties of the contract that he was hired to do. However, the superintendent must be held accountable for implementing that strategic plan. The board is responsible also for the hiring and the firing based on the superintendent's recommendation. So the board and the superintendent's And I'm sorry, also in the policy, it speaks to the relationship with the superintendent. The superintendent should never run the board because the board are the elected officials from the constituents of that community. We give him the directive. This is the way that we want to go, and we're taking that information from our community, who has elected us, who have charged us with the duty. If at any point the superintendent is not fulfilling that duty, and annually we should be evaluating him. On a monthly basis, he should be providing us with the outcomes. And the most important outcome is student academic growth. Student academic growth supersedes everything. Financial oversight. We're going to approve the budget that he's provided with us. We're going to approve and give him what he needs to make this vision come to life. If at any point that vision does not come to life, we must hold that superintendent accountable. That may mean position for 3 years and the academic scores have declined for 3 consecutive years, and student dropout rate has increased for 3 straight years. It is time for our team to start over again and get someone else to do the drawing board, because if it's not working with this one, we don't renew a 5-year contract.
All right, that's the end of your time. Thank you so much. Is
I'm
Marla
sorry.
next up?
I'm sorry, Marla is next up. Yes, I was muting my dog out of this. He was talking. He had impressions on that answer. Yeah.
No problem. Marla, go ahead.
So the first thing that I just want to identify, that if you are going to hold someone accountable, you have to be informed and you have to be competent in regards to what it takes to become a successful school district. So being a board member, it is up to you to lead the charge in educating yourself. If you are not an educator by trade, on what it takes to have an effective district. It's going to take some learning outside of, just board meetings. If you truly want to know what it takes to be an effective educational leader and you are not that by trade, you will educate yourself. So that is the number one thing. Board members have to dedicate time, energy, and effort into understanding what it takes to lead a successful district. 2, they have to establish that they are in charge. You have to understand that you are here on behalf of your constituents. You have to respect them. You have to respect their voice, and you have to make sure your superintendent understands that. You want to make sure that when you are hiring a superintendent, that they have proven results of turning around a district if your district is in trouble. I just don't believe that you can hire a superintendent to turn around a district that has never turned around a district. We need someone who is a proven and experienced leader in turning around a district that is on a downward trajectory. And that comes with truly opening up, educating ourselves outside of board meetings, outside of closed session, making sure that we know what it takes to lead an effective board so we can then look for and hire effective leadership. If we don't do that, it's going to be insanity. We're going to keep doing the same things and thinking we're going to get a different result when we're not. So we have to truly do some self-reflecting as to what it means to be a board member, what it means to be an educated and effective board member, and then take those skills and employ competent leadership who is proven. They have data to prove that they have turned around a district. Until we can establish that relationship, we aren't going to move forward, and we must do that in order to move forward.
Thank you. Mia Carter.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm always going to start saying hi just to make sure y'all can hear me.
Go.
What's interesting is Marla is really right. The learning curve, if you are not an educator or you're not a policy person, you're not a technical person, the learning curve is huge. As much as I thought I was prepared to do this job, I wasn't. And to be honest with you, I was a little embarrassed. I mean, I went all the way in college And I would many times sat there totally not understanding what was going on and didn't know who to trust to ask. So the learning curve was amazing. It was amazing. But I just want to use my time to talk about this. Every year when we do our retreats, we give the superintendent a goal. He presents us his vision of how he wants to move our district forward and what he's going to do. And we agree that this is our mission and this is our goal. And this is what you're going to be evaluated on at the end of the year to see how close you got to those goals. You know, that's our way of holding him accountable. We have to make sure that we hold him accountable. But here's the other thing. We have to make sure we give him the tools necessary to do the job. Because this is what I know for sure. If the superintendent fails, we fail. Our kids fail. So if I have to keep going back, readjusting, reevaluating, giving somebody the tools, working with, trying to understand, let's reach an agreement. And that's what the board members too. Sometimes we have to get over ourselves and figure out how we're going to effectively disagree so that we can be successful. If we're not on point, the other candidates are right. It starts with the board. If we're not on point, our superintendent really can't be on point. The staff can't be on point, and the kids can't learn. So I believe in holding the superintendent accountable, but I also believe in making sure that he's given the tools to complete that vision that he gave me, which is a wonderful vision, I believe, and where our kids can go.
Thank you, Mia.
I'm turning it over to Gina right now. She's proposing that we do something, so she'll let us know. Gina?
Hey, everybody. Yes, just wanted to kind of check in. It's 7:43. We've been at this for a little over an hour. I just wanted to give the opportunity for a 5-minute break. If we're able to maybe just use the restroom or get up and stretch our legs, grab a drink of water, we're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break. We'll put on some background music to kind of let you know we're still on the break, and then we will see you back in those 5 minutes. Thank you so much for your attendance and your participation so far. It's been a great forum, I think. Yeah. Thank you. We'll put the timer on the screen for 5 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry. Who was that?
I mean, I just unmuted myself. And so
sure.
I'm just
Hi, Paul.
a listener or one that is involved in community. And I noticed that some of the questions that are in the chat, you know, have not been asked of certain individuals. I think that would illuminate what they're talking about as far as education is concerned and as far as the environment is concerned, and how that relate to their leadership skills in conjunction with the superintendent and the other various different educational components that involve.
Sure, Mr. Cartwright.
Things like that should be asked. And I did ask that of certain individuals because they opened that up for that. So I would like those at least.
Yes, absolutely. Every question that has been put in the chat box, we absolutely will ask. So in the very beginning, when we explain the questioning procedures, what we're doing is alternating between the chat box and questionnaire questions off of our SOS questionnaire. So our very next question when we return from the break will be, here it is. It will be from Mason Noel. And then he asked 2 questions. So we'll alternate his second question towards the end to make sure everybody else has a chance to ask one. And then we'll have Veronica Franklin as the second question when we return. And Paul, yours is going to be the third when we return. So once we get back, we'll get right into that chat box questions. Thank you so much for your participation, and we appreciate you staying on tonight. I know it's a long commitment, but it's important. Thank you so much. We're going to go on that 5-minute break. I'll put a timer up on the screen. everyone. Welcome back. Hopefully you were able to stretch your legs with something to drink. Let me see. Oh, someone's timer is going off somewhere. All right, let me see here. Okay, there we go. We are on Mr. Mason Newell's question. And I have it ready. Connie, do you know who will be the first one to answer this next question?
Yes, we rotated to Marla Johnson will be first.
Okay, so the question from Mason Newell is, surrounding districts employ more graduates of our District 227 than District 227 does. What is your stance on this issue and what are you willing to do to support changing this culture? And Marla, go right ahead.
That's a great question. And I always take a hot approach to things, honest, open, and transparent. And as an alum of the district, I've seen plenty times where alums have went out for positions who were qualified, who were from the area, who had grass, who just were homegrown, as I say, and they were passed up for opportunities. And a lot of this comes down to who you have in your human resource department. I think we need to do some oversight of what we look for when we're looking for candidates. If we want to put an emphasis on hiring our own, then we truly in our human resource department need to seek out that talent. Because let me tell you, 227 has graduated some exceptional professionals, and they would love to come back to the district. However, the district does not allow them that opportunity. What we find, just being in education, having a mother who is in education, it's a lot of people who tend to choose relationship over what will be best for our organization. So I think we really have to look into what we're looking for in our human resource department. And we need to have those conversations and ask those questions. If we're seeing that we have this talent coming out of 227 and then they are trying to return, why aren't we hiring them? Why aren't we choosing to go with someone who is from our district, who has the pride, history, and heritage to move us forward? So that's just really a conversation and looking to our human resource department and having that conversation and moving forward into finding that talent that we have coming out of 227.
Thank you very much. Jameer, you're next. You're next.
All righty. So yeah, I totally agree that we should internally hire. I know of 3 people that have tried to get a job, and what I learned, I am not an educator. I'm a marketing and sales background, and that's what I do every day. But I do understand that in education, it is a very, very small arena. And with that being said, that everyone in education knows everyone. And so, especially if you're of high quality and you've done well in education, I think it's something that really speaks to your long-term trajectory in education. And I think that we have to make sure that we're identifying the candidates. I've had the fortunate time to serve on many interviewing panels within District 227, where I have seen not done in the best interest of, once again, not the best interest of 227, but in the best interest of personal agendas. And that's something that we have to make sure that we are not mindful of, and we have to hold the superintendent accountable, that we have the most highest level of integrity when we are having our hiring practices, and making sure that our assistant superintendent of human resources is making sure that that is his or her priority, to make sure that we look at getting top talent and bringing it back. And the wonderful thing about someone who's been homegrown in our district, they understand our DNA. They understand our students. They understand they were teachers, they were in the classroom, and they moved up. I did hear most recently that this is something that they are going to be looking to make sure that they're home-growing things and making sure that they internally build up. But I would like to see that supported in a strategic plan that supports long-term how they're going to get to that point, and making sure that we bring people that represent our community, that live in our community, that spend their dollars in our community, just as they put their taxpayers' dollars back in our community. And if we begin to spend more dollars in our community, we'll see a natural evolution of growth, accountability, culture will go up, morale will go up, because people will be invested, and it won't be a job or just coming for 5 years to get your student loans paid off and then going on to another district, because we do have a high propensity of that as well in the district.
Thank you, Jameer. Dr. Bounds?
Well, one way that we ensure, first of all, it heartens my heart to hear that our alums are being overlooked by other individuals who are, I would say that they are made, from what I'm hearing, are more qualified than. So that heartens my heart. So as a board member, again, we are in charge of policies. So there are policies for hiring. What I would suggest as a board member, meaning that I'm one, I would suggest that first, our hiring practices include offering a point system. In that point system, we should give those who are alums 2 points just for being an alum to come into the interview. From there, and that could be one of our administrative procedures, when they're interviewed, that information is checked off that they are an alum. And then they will be based on a point system. Also, anything that's brought before the board for hiring, or any individual that comes before the board for hiring, there should be a checkoff list that the superintendent brings. And in that checkoff list, it should have each person's name that was interviewed and why the team selected the primary candidate, even if it's not the alum, but why the team selected that. I know that one district that I worked with, they had each individual person that was on the interview panel to write down, this was their selection. And that way you remove those personal agendas, because now you've got the consensus from the board. I'm sorry, from the hiring committee that's looking at it. And then the board has that access so that we know, no, this person was the best candidate for our district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mia Carter.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
You know, I believe in hiring local talent. Absolutely. Alumni and local talent. Even in terms of the police department, I believe that our police department should make the matchup of our community, that we should do our best effort to hire from our residents and, you know, from our local talent pool. Now, having said that, I also believe I want the best candidate. I want the candidate that is going to complete the mission and the vision that I gave to my superintendent. But all things being equal, I want the preference given to the alumni, but I want the best candidate. However, I believe the superintendent could be different. He needs to have some say in the team that he needs to build to make sure he's successful, because at the end of the day, he's going to be held accountable. He needs to be able to trust his team. And if that team is people that he picked that I might not necessarily feel is the best candidate, I need to trust that he is picking this person to, once again, complete the mission and the vision that I gave him. So my answer to that question is we should have more alumni. They're from the community, they know the kids. That will be very helpful. But having said that, I want the best candidate. And maybe that's trying to have the best of both worlds. But in my mind, 227 alumni should be the best candidate. So maybe that should be a non-issue. And maybe we could do a little more to make sure, how are we getting the word out and recruiting? I would like to be part of that process. Thank you.
Gina, next question.
Oh, yep. Let me see. We have Mason. I know you asked a second question. We're not forgetting about it, but I do need to rotate to others to make sure everyone has a chance for one question, and we'll get back to your second one if we have time. Next question is from Veronica Franklin. It is, what programs are in place at the Fine Arts campus for students who write, perform, and produce videos? Not sure what is in place for students whose interest is music that is not traditional. Not every child will go to college. So the question, that was the comment with that question. So the question is, what programs are in place at the Fine Arts campus for students who write, perform, and produce videos? And I think, who's the first for this one, Connie? Let me see. I think we started with Jameer on the last one. Did we start with Jameer on the last question? Okay, so then Dr. Kinsella Bounds, you would be first.
Okay, so I'll say I haven't looked at the programs that's offered. What I would say should be offered for those students who write and perform is there should be some sort of, there should be a studio, and there should be the engineering, because engineers are needed for those who are going to go into a studio. There should be some form of writing. teaching them how to write. I mean, if they're going to do, if they're performing, if it's going to be classical, they want to know how to write classical music. If it's going to be rap, and we'll say rap is poetry. So there should be some form of poetry writing offered in that campus. So those should be offered. Instrumental keynotes. I do some singing, so I know a little bit about singing. But I think it should be a full array, and that way students who go into that program, performing arts, they have the full gamut of what you can become if you go into performing arts. So that's what should be included.
Thank you. So Marla Johnson is next.
So that is a great question. And one thing I just want to draw some attention to is, with this consolidation, we should know what is going on in our fine arts school. So I should be able to tell you those things, but they're not readily available. So I think that goes back to, we have to communicate what things are going on in our schools. When I was in school, we had band, we had jazz, we had show choir. I know when my brother back in the 90s, their show choir, it was huge. By the time I got there, it was very small. So when we're looking at resources, the resources aren't the issue. It's how we're allocating those resources and then communicating those resources. So I wish I could answer what do we have for students who are going into the fine arts, but unfortunately, currently, that is not being communicated to constituents. So we have to do a better job moving forward, because if those programs are available, which I'm sure, which was part of their consolidation plan, to be able to put all those resources into one campus to offer more offerings for our students, we now need to know what's the return on that investment. And unfortunately, at this point, we do not. So moving forward, I would hope that there are more offerings for students who are into fine arts, because what we know is that when fine arts are in the schools, students tend to perform better in their academics. So it is my hope that they are really honing in on those skills and those offerings, but then communicating it with the constituents so we can speak more intelligently on those offerings.
Thank you, Marla. And I believe
Jameer is next on this. Yes.
you're still muted, Jameer. Hold on.
Okay, I got you.
We'll give you 3 minutes. Yep, go right ahead and start.
Okay. Just want to make sure I hear it. I know the fine art. I think I can answer it. So you have, we do have some fine art programs. We have percussion ensemble, piano lab, heritage ensemble, concert choir honors, intro to musical instruments, concert band, symphonic band. We also have symphonic band, jazz ensemble honors, music theory, music survey, music theater. And then I think, to Ms. Franklin's question, we do have a music technology and an independent study. And so the independent study, I know, is something that is, once you went through so many layers of, and I'm using layer, but you matriculated through so many different, our band program, it's almost like a work study or independent study program that they offer for our students. So that they can go on and pursue something. But I think it's all something that, once again, we have to go back to the feeder schools and identify this early on, so that we know a student is strong in the music, that we have those fair partnerships in place to make sure the students are on that trajectory, that they're at the fundamental can read and write music and understand music, so that when they're coming from one of our feeder schools, that by the time they get there, we've identified them and we move them on a fast track to make sure that we're getting them more exposure, going down to the radio station, because one of my good friends who's an alumni of the district, she works for WGCI, and getting them that exposure where we bring students to see how it is to work in a radio studio, to see what they did in their classroom, or if we had a studio campus where we had a professional studio, or bringing in partners to make sure that they taught about it, I think would be phenomenal, so that we can continue that conversation as they mature on throughout the process.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Jameer. Mia Carter.
Hi.
Hi.
Jameer did a great job of outlining some of our programs, but you know, one of the things that I enjoyed going to over the last 4 years, and I don't know how many of you made it, is to some of the phenomenal plays that the district put on. And the reason why I bring that up is because the kids were responsible for every aspect of the production, to the scoring, to the writing, to the directing, to the music, to the set design, to stagehand. You know, some of those plays were phenomenal. The talent in 227 is phenomenal, which actually just makes me think about the point I made. If you don't know, to Marla's point, or it might have been Dr. Bounds, if you don't know what we're doing, you don't get to see the students in that light. We need to have more communication with the community to say, guess what? Did you know that we're going to have a state-of-the-art sound studio in our school, where kids who want to be journalists or filmmakers or set designers, any of those kids can get experience? Did you know we're going to have a state-of-the-art dance studio, so the kids who are interested in dance can do that? That's what the Fine Arts Campus is going to plan to offer. And it is amazing. But guess what? If you don't know what they're offering, you don't know how amazing it is. So we have to do a better job of letting you know just how amazing our programs and our kids are. And we can sit here and talk about what's wrong, but I still want to talk about what's going on right too. And the kids have amazing opportunities, and we plan to do more.
Thank you.
Do we have another question in the
Yes, ma'am.
community chat?
Yes, let me get to it. So our next question is from Paul Cartwright. The question is, what community resources you would like to see implemented in the schools at various different levels?
And we will start with Jamie.
I think it's Marla. We started with
okay. Marla.
Yep, let me, oh, hold on, let me find her. There you are, Marla. There we go. Let me get you on spotlight. Okay, so yes, I'll repeat the question for you. Sure. So the question is, what community resources would you like to see implemented in the schools at various different levels?
Yeah, so there is a variety of community resources that I would like to see. Part of my current job now is to connect with community-based organizations that provide wraparound services for students. And I would love to see more community-based organizations come in to our district. Also, I'm a big proponent of TRIO. That's a program that's federally funded. It works with students from low income, first generation, and student with disabilities. A lot of people don't know that we don't just have one TRIO program, we have two TRIO programs. And that TRIO program is out of Prairie State College. I would love to see them brought to the table more. They offer some great things, but unfortunately, they're not able to be utilized as much. So I think that's something great that we definitely need to bring to the table. In regards to our teachers, we need to make sure we're providing them with the professional development based on social and emotional learning. Coming out of this pandemic, we are going to face some learning curves that we've never experienced before. So we want to make sure that we're providing them with those resources that can come through community-based organizations that are state funded, grant funded. This is their mission, to truly go out and be servants to different organizations. So we want to make sure that we're utilizing that with district administration. Also looking into professional development for them as well, because what we know is that at the end of the day, we must continue to learn. The only thing constant is change. So we must continue to cultivate our skills, to cultivate our knowledge base, and as well as the board. We have a whole budget for professional development of board members, and we need to make sure that we're utilizing that and being efficient and effective in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Jameer Atkins.
Yes, so I am completely for bringing in community. and bringing in community resources. I think to echo with Marla said, I totally agree with that in the sense that we do need to partner with all TRIO programs. We need to make sure that any program that is willing to come in our district and help to bring that whole pie analogy back. I think the more partnerships we do on a professional arena makes sense. Also on a government. So if we have government funded programs and grants that we can get to bring in resources, I think it makes good sense. Partnering with our local municipalities, partnering with people as such as Mia Carter and the community policing program, and making sure that I know she has her cadet program that she offers and other things like that. I think that is a great resource. Of course, as so many of you guys know here, I am clergy. And so I believe in partnering with local churches as well to bring in resources to be able to do such things as mentoring and having those meaningful conversations, because I think a lot of times that young people don't have that access to mentoring. And when you don't have access to mentoring, teachers are busy, parents are busy, but you know what? It's something about that mentor that helped you walk those stages. It's something about me being a corporate professional and being able to help connect some dots for you as you mature through your high school experience. And so when you graduate, that we can make sure that through that mentoring relationship that we have, we can be intentional about getting you to the next level, partnering you with someone just not in a professional setting, but in a personal setting so you can grow. And of course, we understand that's after background screening and all that good stuff has been done. But I think mentorship is a key component that sometimes I think we've forgotten. And I think it's very impeding now that our young people, especially coming out of this pandemic, are experiencing those social emotional issues. And we want to make sure that we're on the up and up with that and making that conversation more meaningful.
Thank you. Dr. Bounds?
And I too agree that we should bring community resources in. Starting off with Prairie State, yes, we should have that partnership. I do remember when my kids were at 227, there was the college tours, and that was a resource that came into the school and provided our students the opportunity to visit all of the Illinois state universities. I think that's something our students should have that opportunity. I allowed my son to go as early as his freshman year because I wanted him to think about where he wanted to go in the next 5 years. Allowing the military to come in and not just come in and you do an ROTC program, but actually explaining to our children what resources and supports they offer. Partnering with the hospitals in the community. We know that social emotional is going to be huge when our children return. So making sure that we have that support as well. And the state, Illinois State Board of Education has tons of resources that they can provide. Not say, no, there's someone that I don't want to let come in. I want everyone to come in. And then as a board, we evaluate what is it that our district needs and what is it that our students need based off surveys and data and parent input and community input. And then we determine what's an appropriate fit for our organization. Now, what I won't do is I won't allow a board member to bring in their organization. If they are on a board and they will receive proceeds, then I think that would be a conflict of interest. So for that, I would not agree with. But everyone else is welcome to come in.
Oh, thank you. Mia Carter? Where's me? Oh, there's me.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, hi, how are you?
Good. This was what community resources we want to see, right? From the community?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
You know, and I saw it in the chat, and I think I heard Jameer talk about it in terms of what community resources, that are out there. One, I like to say I love TRIO. I think it's wonderful. I love that as one of our kids' programs. Some of the other things also appreciated this past 2 years, well, specifically before the pandemic really hit, the kids were allowed to attend counseling services after school. Now that might not seem like a big deal until you consider this. There's a large population of families out here that don't have transportation. I think we take it for granted that because our median income says such, that wouldn't be an issue. But there's a large amount of kids who need help that just can't get to it. So to have that as a resource, a community agency that comes in and provides on-site counseling to our kids was extremely important. You know, we have to do more community resource with business incubators, with things that are going to grow and develop our kids, more partnerships with the businesses and things like that. Those are resources as well. You know, one of the other things I wrote down is social emotional learning, I had told you guys, is really going to become important. Now more than ever, we need more resources for these kids outside the school building. We have to do more partnerships with mentoring, with more counseling, with more recreational opportunities. Everybody's not playing basketball or football or any sport with the kid. We need to offer community alternatives that aren't $150 a session, because that's what I paid for my son to play basketball at the rec center. You know, we have to make sure that all areas of how we want our kids to develop and be successful are being addressed. So we got some great community resources, but I think I'm gonna end everything with saying we need more. Every year we need more. We're gonna do more. We're gonna find new partners. And that's how everybody's gonna be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia. Let me find the next question here. Okay, Veronica, we got yours. Okay, next up is Beverly Moore asks, how do you think the board should direct the district in allocating federal funds to support teachers to help students make up ground from the learning loss due to COVID? Connie, who starts this one?
Jameer.
Okay. Jameer, if you can, yeah, here we go. If you can get your camera on, I'll give you the spotlight. Did you want me to repeat that?
Please do.
Okay. How do you think the board should direct the district in allocating federal funds to support teachers to help students make up ground from learning loss due to COVID?
Well, I think it should be, I would completely direct the superintendent to support teachers. I learned something from a very, 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 very seasoned and managed principal and educator. And she said, all things should support instruction and learning. And so the only way you can support instruction and learning, and I think it was called the success model of education, is through supporting teachers. If you're not supporting teachers, then we are setting our community up for failure. And I believe that if there is any extra funding, it should go to the dollars of teachers. I think the teachers are underpaid before the service. And I think coming out of this COVID pandemic, people are realizing the impeding, or not impeding, how rigorous the work is to teach their own children. And we take for granted our teachers. I believe if I had the say at the governor level or wherever it is, the federal level, I would say that teachers need to make more than administrators, because administrators manage. Teachers deal with day to day, and they have to deal with the ups and downs. They have to deal with the social moment. They have to deal with the kid that comes in and lost their parent, or the kid that is going through identity issues. They have to deal with all of that, where you have an administrator who just manages that teacher. And so I believe that any federal funding, I would give the directive immediately to support those teachers, put those funds back into teachers, and make sure that the teachers have the resource to properly educate students, make sure that if they're there. One question I asked the other day about our IB program, are we compensating our teachers in an incentive program to teaching this? Because it is more rigor, it does require more. And if we continue to do that, we want teachers and students make the culture of your school. So if your teachers or your students are unhappy, you're going to feel it in the building. The CEO of Costco and Chick-fil-A said, we're going to always take care of our employees, because if our employees are upset, it upsets our dichotomy, and it upsets our culture. And they want to make sure that we make sure they're happy. And so we want to make sure teachers are happy within means, and we want to make sure that our students are happy. And so, and that they have all the support that they need.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Bounds, you are next for that question.
Okay.
Did
So,
you want me to repeat it?
yeah, go ahead and repeat it. Thanks.
Sure. So the question was from Beverly Moore. Let me get to it. Here we go. How do you think the board should direct the district in allocating federal funds to support teachers to help students make up ground from the learning loss due to COVID?
Okay. So first and foremost, the board's duty is to provide the strategic plan. The assistant superintendent or the curriculum director and the special education actually submits with community input and with their team input. They write the grant. So the grant is actually written July 1 of, it will due July 1 of the year prior to the instructional. So the board's duty is just to review it. There is a certain dollar amount, and I believe it's 15 or 20% of the grant that is allocated for professional development. The board can support this by approving the professional development that the administrative team puts at hand. So you would say if the strategic plan is we want to provide more support for social emotional learning, then that's something that the administrative, that's the day-to-day, they're going to handle, locating that information, giving teachers the options of selecting what do they think they need training on. And then as a board, we vote to approve whether it's in state or out of state. We approve the vacation. I'm sorry, if it's out of state, it requires board approval. Otherwise, it's just our directive of this is in our strategic plan. This is where we want them to go. And then the superintendent implements that plan.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Marla Johnson.
So that's a great question. And as I spoke to earlier, we have to educate ourselves on what it's going to look like to be successful moving forward. So some things just working in higher education and seeing what they're doing in other districts. Some things I will want to implement or suggest to the superintendent because this is a collaborative effort. Although I would like to say what I feel is best, I do want to be able to trust my superintendent. But a part of that is doing my due diligence as a Board of Education member and bringing some really effective changes that could possibly happen. So some things I am seeing in other districts that they're providing additional access to tutoring in the virtual space. So this is tutoring that is completely covered by the district. In some cases, they are hiring their teachers to come in and tutor additional hours, or they're contracting with additional tutoring services. So I would love to see that implemented. We know that there's an achievement gap in Black and Brown communities, and that's only gotten worse in the middle of this pandemic. So we're going to really have to focus on providing additional academic services for our students. Another thing that we're going to have to focus on is our emotional and social learning. So I would love to see more in-house counseling services. What we know is that all students aren't accessible to counseling services. And if they are, someone spoke on having issues with getting there. So if we had that in-house counseling coming out of our building, we eliminate that obstacle for students. Another thing, hire more social workers. We need more social workers in our buildings. These are some of the most essential staff members that we have in buildings, so we need to hire more of them. Studies show that more of our kids are having issues with mental health issues, and those social workers are going to help them work through that as well as counseling. Another thing is making sure our teachers feel safe, and just by providing things like additional PPE. We want our teachers to come into the building and we want them to feel safe. If they're asking for more PPE, give it to them, because at the end of the day, they are charged with the task of educating our students, and unless they feel supported, how do we expect them to support our students effectively? So those are some things that I would definitely suggest to our superintendent to moving our district forward and allocating those funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Marla. Mia Carter. Hi.
Hi, everybody. I feel like I'm getting further and further away from the camera, like I'm sliding down. But I hope I'm not. You know, as far as funding is concerned, the candidates on this call are all very smart, and they have wonderful ideas, many of things that I would have said. But what I would like to add and I hope that we can use federal funding or title funding or some of those things, is to teach our teachers more de-escalation techniques, more ways to calm situations, more offering of what some may call respite rooms or smart rooms, things that we can put in place when our kids are not quite ready to learn. Now, if we don't do both of those things, we'll miss the mark. If we just train the teachers on how to do things different, but we don't give them the tools to do it, we'll miss the mark. If we just focus on the tools and don't give the teachers the training, then we'll miss the mark. So we have to work together in terms of preparing our staff. And I think to Marla's point, hiring more staff. You know, hiring social workers, great. We put some focus on student aides in addition to security, things that can be more of a de-escalation techniques and how to confront, how to address, what tools. I'm all for more staff. More funding for after school tutoring and quite possibly summer programs, because that might be what it takes to get some of our kids who have likely lost an entire year. And while they may promote to the next grade, they won't have enough credits to graduate when the time comes. So we have to figure out, how do we do this at a step? We can't just let those kids come back to school and be like, you need 8 classes, sweetie, and expect for that kid to be able to do that. We have to come up with things, and it's going to take more money because it's going to take more staff. So those are some of the things we can allocate federal funding for.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any more questions from the community?
Yes, we do. Let me go back. So we had 6 total questions when we went on break, but let me go back up to see. I think we have 1 left. Thank you for your patience. Yeah, so our last question from before our break was Mason Newell's second question. Surrounding district, oh no, I'm sorry, we got that one. It is, are you willing to employ more staff members to address the social deficiencies due to the pandemic? Marla kind of touched on this one already, and I think a couple others, but we can revisit that. Are you willing to employ more staff members to address the social deficiencies due to the pandemic?
We'll start with Dr. Bounds.
Okay.
So to that question, I would say yes. I would hire, again, more social workers, which everyone has said. We know we're going to be in need for our clinicians. So we're going to hire our social workers. I would also look at hiring additional psychologists, because the psychologist can fill in where the actual school counselor or social worker can't. I would also employ hiring. I would like to hire, I don't know how many paras there are. So maybe hiring more paras to support those who may have some social emotional issues or concerns, or those who may exhibit some and just need support. But I would also look at hiring health aides, because I want to not overwhelm the nurse. Some kids may come back to school, and because they've been out, they're going to exhibit they may have acquired some habits that they didn't have the year prior. So making sure that we have health aides available in the school so that they can support the school nurse. I would look at, I know there's only one principal, so we must hire a second principal. Then I would have to consider our budget currently. So I know that if we're doing this hiring, can we afford it? So I would have to, there's going to have to be some areas where we're going to have to cut. And I noticed one thing I looked at in the district's AFR, which is the annual financial report. And I noticed the board has allocated for their educational services under code 2310, line 52, under the expenditures, $567,000. So if I'm thinking about, I'm going to hire these people, I need to cut somewhere, because we cannot sustain with just hire, hire, hire. There's going to have to be some trimming of the budget. And I did a comparison of surrounding districts, high schools, even elementary schools, and no one had $567,000 allocated for the Board of Educational Services. The most was $267,000. So I would look at trimming that off, and then we can hire someone, because wherever you hire, that budget goes up, and who gets hit? Our community. So I want to keep the taxes low, and I want to do something that's affordable, that works for the best interests of children. Thank you.
Thank you. Marla Johnson is next. Same
Can
question.
I have the question one more time?
Yes, the question.
I have a comment. People are
Sure,
talking
Lynn.
about becoming the board of directors of 227 education. And how do you prepare people to do that? Have people considered internships, whether they're paid or not, to bring students in who are qualified and seem to be interested in that vocation, to come and sit and help make decisions and look at how you have to deal with one another?
Thank you, Lynn, for that question. If we can keep that in mind, I can make sure to add that onto our questions to make sure that we give everybody a fair chance to have their question answered. So Marla, to go back, the question is, are you willing to employ more staff members to address the social deficiencies due to the pandemic? Your time starts.
Yes, I am. I briefly spoke on it earlier. And another thing that I also would want to mention is while our focus is the child, we also are going to have to bring in our family as well, because what we know is the family, they're the first line of educators that our students have. So if there's issues going on within the family and family dynamics, that is going to affect the student, and the student is going to bring that into the school. So with giving resources to our students, I also would like to see if we can extend that to the families as well. One thing we know is that when a family is more invested, they trust our district more. And when we provide them those services, we show that we are truly looking to protect the entire child, and that includes bringing the family in. So on top of providing resources in our schools, I would also want to extend those resources to families of those students.
Thank you. Thank you. Jameer Atkins.
Yes, Gina, can you give me that question one more time? I'm trying to find it. I can't find it on my chat.
Sorry, I had myself muted.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Are you willing to employ more staff members to address the social deficiencies due to the pandemic?
Oh, most definitely. I believe that, of course, social services, so we said social worker, things of that nature. I do know currently that the district does, through Dr. Harris's department, they do family counseling and a few other resources as well, because I know Marla just brought that up. They do offer that, but once again, because there's a lack of strategic planning, we need to make sure that we put that information out to the entire district, because they do offer some services under some special programming that they have to offer. But I think we can make it more broad and more advanced, and we also can show that our students need it. With that being said, when we look at our district, we see that we do have, we are very high end on our administrative salary. We are in the top 10% for administrative salaries in the state of Illinois. And so when I look at that, how resourceful are we? What's the return on investment? And could we take some of those dollars and put those dollars back into bringing in? Can we trim some fat? Do we have too much to me? Because I think we have 23 or 26, I can't remember, administrators currently. What are some of those roles? Can we bring the restorative justice person back? We used to have our deans designated to that until they moved them over to climate and culture coordinators out of the bargaining unit and took the deans out. But we used to have a dean that was designated for restorative justice. And so my question will go back to, do we still have that be consumed. And I know I believe the state requires that there is someone who does restorative justice. So who is that person? Is it a district-wide person, or do they have one of those people at each campus as well?
Thank you, thank you. And so, Dr. Bonds, did you answer that question?
Yes, I did. I went first.
Okay, thank you. Thank
Mhm.
you. All right, so we have some more questions in the chat from the community.
Did Mia Carter get a chance to answer that one?
Mia? Hello? Okay, Mia's next.
I was just gonna go with the flow, whatever y'all
No,
thought.
no,
I was
no,
just gonna go to the.
no.
I
Yeah.
actually have a very quick answer to that. And
Okay,
it's a yes, a 3-part yes. Yes to staff, yes to tools, yes to technology. And when you say staff, now we're talking about hiring because of the pandemic, correct? That is the question, right?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
we are going to have a discussion. Who's ever elected to this board after April 6th is going to have a discussion of what changes we're going to put in place to now address the needs and where the staff will be the best needed. Support staff is also essential. Janitorial staff, health staff, all of these things are going to have to be looked at to see, okay, we know when these kids come back, we're going to need this. This is where we need to put the funding. This is what we need to do. So my answer is yes to staff, tools, and tech.
Thank you, Mia.
thank you very much.
Connie, we do have, let me see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm sorry. Yes, 4 questions, 5, including Lynn's verbal question that are still remaining for live questions. I know we're getting.
Can we look at those questions to see if they've been previously touched upon? We have
Sure.
had some repeats tonight. And while you're looking over that, I want to talk to the candidates regarding the current state of the Board of Education and its educational leader. The leader has a 5-year extension on the contract. Have any of you read that contract? And if you have not, please read it carefully. I have taken a long, hard look at it, and I cannot find a requirement on the advancement of student achievement in that contract, and that's the chief educator. And so I would ask, my ask would be, if that is indeed the case, how are you thinking about how to bring that into the contract? Because I think that's one of the uppermost characteristics of the lead educator. We want to hold the lead educator responsible for the advancement of student achievement in the district. And without that, I don't know what else we're holding them accountable for. So I'm asking all of you to take a look at that contract, but if you were elected to go in there tomorrow, how would you handle that challenge of reopening that contract and making sure that the advancement on student achievement is in that contract clearly stated? Okay, we'll start with Dr. Bounds.
So I have reviewed the new contract, and I also reviewed the prior contract. No, it doesn't state anything about academic growth. However, that would fall under his job description. So how you handle that is you go in starting April 1st, and we sit down. If his contract is renewed for 5 years, so we're going to sit down and we're going to put together a rubric, an evaluation instrument. And as the board, we have that right to do it. Based on that evaluation instrument, we will then include student academic growth. And I mean, the duty of the board, the duty of education is to educate students. So if the students are not showing growth, how are we educating students? I know there's the whole we want to say the whole child, but we have to start off with academics. So we'll look at first adding in that rubric, that criteria for student academic growth, and it can be based on either ASAT scores, or it can be based on a normed assessment where there has to be some form of growth, and we as a board will decide, is it going to be 5% growth? Is it going to be 10% growth? Because if he's not showing growth and our kids are not growing, why are we here? That would be added in, and it would be, because it would be presented to him and he's aware of it. That's how we're going to hold him accountable. Based on the student's academic growth, we can look at dropout rate. Our dropout rate should never increase. It should decrease over the years. We've got all these wonderful programs. So if they're so wonderful, why are our students leaving? So we'll look at dropout rate. We can also look at, I mean, we can look at the same measures that the state actually measures us on.
Yes.
So we know what's there. We know what accountability really means. So we'll just plug those in. As a team, as a board team, we'll discuss that, we'll present it to them, and it will be what it is, because again, the board runs the superintendent, not vice versa.
Thank you. Marla Johnson.
So for me, this answer is quite simple. Coming from a business administration background, we have to look at the KPIs, the key performance indicators, and we have to have quantitative data. Qualitative data is good. We like to see that we're offering more programs. We like to see that we have 2 shiny new buildings, but how is that, how are we looking at that from a quantitative data point of view? Yes, we have these offerings, but if the students still cannot read and write, and we have not increased those deficits or decreased those deficits, what are we doing? So we have to have effective looks at what we are at our KPIs and make sure that those are in the contract. I have had an opportunity to look at it, and unfortunately, it's quite disheartening that that's not in there. That's something that we must have moving forward. That's the only way we're going to be able to move forward from this point, is truly having some cold, hard facts to really back up why we're paying you 200,000+, why we continue to extend your contract. If we cannot do that, we should not continue to move forward in that. We have to reevaluate how we are looking at what we call exceptional and a successful educational leader.
Thank you. Jameer Atkins.
Yes, so I echo the sentiments of everyone that's spoken thus far. I am, as I said, I am a metrics-based, performance-based employee, and I'm very familiar with KPI. I get them every month. If I am elected, I will bring in a conversation, sit down with the superintendent, look over his performance for the last 3 years. Be honest that the funding formula is the reason the district moved up from the bottom 500s to the high 400s, is because it was the funding formula that changed. And so it made us assess and go up higher. But when we look at graduation rate, when we look at dropout rate, we have declined. And to have a very, very meaningful conversation, I would ask that we have a strategic plan in place to document his performance on a month-to-month basis, on a quarterly basis, and on a yearly basis. And if we have a consecutive rolling calendar that shows that we have not seen the growth that we're looking for, then we have to evaluate the performance of the superintendent. I think at that point in time, if the evaluations don't meet, it's not personal, it's not anything that I desire, but it's the best thing for students. But I cannot sit back and take almost $280,000 a year and pay a superintendent, not our current superintendent or any superintendent, that is not meeting the metrics to move our district forward. It's nothing personal. It's great. It sounds rosy. It sounds beautiful. But if you can't effectively communicate, the superintendent oversees all of operations, not just the academics. If the marketing plan is not performing, if any of those moving pieces are not performing, I need to say, you're paying this team very, very well. We gave you carte blanche to bring in your team to support you. And so the team that you have, if any deficit in any area, it is at the responsibility of the superintendent to correct it on a monthly basis, to provide us an executive summary, to develop a team. We pay $25,000 a year for a surveying company to survey. I will put an intermediary team in there to assess the data that comes through that surveying system, to actually see how we are performing and make sure that we see the raw data as the Board of Education and move forward and having those meaningful conversations. And if you don't do the job, hey, it's nothing personal. We have to move on because we have to make sure that we're operating in the best interest of students.
Thank you. Mia Carter.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Well, I guess I'll start with the elephant in the room. I'm the only one on this call that has sat through some superintendent evaluations and had an opportunity to learn. You know, when we go to the school board conferences, I sat in one about how to evaluate a superintendent. I had no idea that it was a very scientific process, to be honest with you. You know, there's some big technical words that was thrown out like Rubik's and all of that things, but there was a whole 4-hour session on how to evaluate a superintendent. What are you looking for? How are you measuring growth? All of those things. And to be honest with you, sometimes I can't tell you what goes on behind the scenes, but there has been a lot of disagreements and arguments and discussion about what we need to put as a goal of our superintendent to make sure that our students achieve. Of course, you can say student achievement. Yes, obviously we all want that. I want that. But how do you do that? You know, and one of the things, and I think Dr. Bound said it about the job description versus the contract, because there is a difference. There's some things that we're going to put in his description, in his goals, and student achievement is one of them. But the candidates have said some great answers. But in my remaining time, one of the things I want you to think about is the partnership with the feeder schools is going to be essential to our student achievement. We get kids who are so far behind, we can't see the growth. And that's not pointing the finger. That's saying that we need to work better with our feeders, which we have done, to make sure kids are coming in the gate prepared so that we aren't spending a lot of time getting them prepared. It's a lot of things that we have to do. And I do believe in holding the superintendent accountable. Absolutely. He needs to explain, everything to us. I know my time's up. So thank you.
Thank you, Mia.
Do we have any more
Yes, ma'am.
questions in chat? Let's take those.
Yes, ma'am. So I did look over the remaining questions. We have 3 that are separate and not repeating themselves. Okay. So the first one is from Holly Fingerly. What do you think about this is kind of a question comment with a final question, which will be like the actual question for them to answer. So what do you think about restorative justice for Rich Township? I know my village president mentioned that much of their police resources are students in their lockup. I am worried about prison pipeline, and I am also worried to hear the superintendent's desire to turn the district office into an alternative school across from Madison Police Station. Would you support a peer restorative justice program for conflict resolution?
We start with Jameer Atkins, please.
Yes, I would definitely support a peer restorative justice program, peer-to-peer restorative justice. I am a strong proponent of restorative justice. It's something that I think is not spotlighted enough in our communities. And that when I say our communities, I'm talking about communities of Black and Brown students. I am not a supporter of hiring more police. I believe we need to hire more social emotional service. I think we need to bring more people in that are ready to have that real conversation and go back to the basics, go back to mentoring, go back to building relationships. Because we do have an issue with prison pipeline, and I agree with Mia. But my thing is, one thing I will say is that 4 years in, we have been talking about building this partnership. Our current superintendent has had a meaningful relationship with Dr. Blondine Davis, Dr. Kalitha White, Dr. Mabel Alford, and their tenure there being in our feeder schools. And then over at 160, they went through several superintendents. I don't know the current one, but what I will say is that we've been having these meaningful conversations for 4 years, and these meaningful conversations about what does consolidation look like. We had a state rep, Anthony DeLuca, come up with a consortium idea of bringing our administrative teams together and saying, how can we collectively bargain with this to make it work? Because we no longer continue to say that we want the best for our students, but we don't provide the resources. We need restorative justice. We need to build the bridge between our partnership schools. And honestly, there needs to be, I'm going to put the elephant in the room, there needs to be a real conversation around consolidation, not nice new shiny buildings, breaking this system down, looking at the core of it and seeing that it is a broken system. Education has been broken in the state of Illinois for an extended amount of time. And we need the caliber of people that can come in and break this system down and rebuild it, strong foundation, quality people, qualified people, and look at data to support how we're going to move forward. Because if we don't look at the data and we don't assess things properly, because every kid is not going to pass the test, but we have to look at each case by case scenario and come up with a solution that is going to make sure that they are able to bridge and that they are able to graduate and that they are productive citizens of society, not just a college graduate, but a productive citizen of society. And we have to start that with bridging those with our elementary schools.
Thank you. Dr. Quintella Bounds, same question.
Okay, so I want to say first, yes, I do support it, and I'll explain to you why. Rich Township 227 was the school with a landmark case that began the no zero policy for the state of Illinois. Because Rich Township was at that time, and some of the board members that are on the board now were currently on the board at that time. Some of the board members said that they had not been made aware of students that were being expelled from the district. So yes, when the state rolled out the zero policy of suspensions, you get 5 days if you do this, 6 days if you do that. When the state rolled out the policy, the state also required that there be restorative practices implemented in every school district, the 867 school districts in the state of Illinois. So, yes, I am in support. This should be done. We should be the trailblazers because we were the landmark case. So we should know better, especially when we have board members who were sitting on that board at that time. No excuse. So yes, I am truly in support. I would make sure that would be my priority coming in as a board member. I would want to know on a monthly basis how many students are either going to the police station, which they should not be. Again, we want to make sure our staff is trained in crises prevention intervention. That's CPI training. Every staff member, you can use the train the trainer model, and you can have them trained. I would also have an expert from ISC 4 right in Chicago Heights to come in and train on restorative practices so that it's implemented within that district. That's the vision that I want to give that superintendent, and that's the vision that they should be following.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Marla Johnson.
So I just want to come out and say that, yes, I am a proponent of restorative justice. I happen to have some training in restorative justice with working with the TRIO program. I would actually go to different court cases, and they would be moved to restorative justice. And I would sit down in some of those sessions and see just how total attitudes and moves would shift. And the reason why is because restorative justice, it has basis in understanding, responsibility, and healing. And with anything, our students need to understand that that is those things are essential to being effective in life. You must have some understanding of yourself, your emotions, and others, and how what decisions you make affect others. You must have some level of responsibility for when you do commit certain acts, how that affects you and your trajectory, as well as your community. Because one thing I love about restorative justice is it takes a look and a scope at how this affects your community as well. And then healing. Anytime something happens between a student and another student or in a community, there has to be some healing done in order to truly move forward. Another reason I am a proponent for this is because what we know that in Black and Brown communities, our students are disproportionately disciplined than of their white counterparts. So when we have a predominantly Black and Brown community, we should not be following those trends. We should be the trendsetters, as Dr. Bow spoke to, in really taking a look at that and turning that around. You know, our students, they truly are our future, and we have to invest in them, and we have to show them that there's a better way. We have to communicate. We have to show effective communication. With being in this virtual world, it has really set our students back in just their communication skills. So when we talk about disciplining a student, we need to understand that they haven't even had the opportunity to truly really tap into their communication skills because they've been in this virtual space. So we have to move forward with more restorative justice practices and move away from disciplinary actions.
Thank you. Mia
Thank you.
Carter.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. So, you know, what's funny is as I was sitting listening, I happened to be a juvenile probation officer at the time. This had to have been maybe 95 or so when they changed the Juvenile Court Act to include balanced and restorative justice. And what that really meant was that juvenile court had to do a better job of offering alternatives to incarceration. You know, offering restorative justice really was founded on the principles having the kid be held accountable to themselves, to the victim, and to the community. And prior to that change of juvenile court, a juvenile victim offender had no access to their victim. They never got to hear the victim tell them how their life was impacted by their crime. And I think that's what impacts kids. So restorative justice, yes. We need it back in schools, yes. Staff is doing training right now through a grant. Yes. Do we have peer jury programs in our police department and was right about to start in school before the pandemic? Yes. So we do have to get back on board. I believe restorative justice is the change that we need to see in terms of discipline with our kids, because I am not in favor of expulsions. I realize due to school safety, sometimes to protect all children, you may have to do that, but some careful thought and investigation and planning has to be put into that. Suspensions, I'm not a huge fan of unless you're going to combine it with services. Don't get a kid a vacation. Some of these kids, you tell them you got to be out of school 10 days. They're like, okay, great. I don't think that they're learning anything. So we do need to talk about alternatives to suspension and expulsion that can be addressed actually through restorative and justice programs. That is one of the purposes. I don't think we've done a good enough job. And then right when we were trying to put the things in place, the kids went to remote learning. So when we get back in the building, that has to be one of the cornerstones of getting those restorative justice programs back, not only in schools, but also in our police departments. We still need to do a better job at that as well.
Thank you. You know, it is 9:59 and some minutes, some seconds. So we're going to say thank you very much to all of the candidates and all of the community who has shown interest in our children's futures by being able to select members out of our community who promise us with their candidacy that they're going to do a better job. I want to thank each of the candidates. I'm very impressed with your input, your answers, and I'm sure SOS, the rest of our members, I speak for the rest of our members when I say that. However, we are ending at 9 o'clock, and it is 9 o'clock on the head. And so thank you for appearing. Thank you to the community for supporting this. Gina?
Yes, so I will go ahead and, sorry, muted myself, didn't mean to do that. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and just quickly share our closing here just so that you all can see what's coming up next. So our very next forum in our series is tomorrow, Sunday, March 14th, starting at 5 p.m. for the Park Forest Chicago Heights School District 163 board candidates. This video will be, it has been recorded this whole time. It will be uploaded to YouTube, and the link will be shared via email to the candidates, as well as posted on our Facebook and shared on social media. You can email us, you can join or like our Facebook page or group to interact. If you still have questions for our candidates, please feel free to use that Facebook group or our email, and we'll be sure to pass that along to the candidates tonight, that they may respond via email, and we can make sure to copy you on that. So go ahead and write down our email address, saveoursouthland@gmail.com. You don't necessarily need those capitals. I put that in there so it's easier to read. So saveoursouthland@gmail.com with any additional questions that may not have been answered tonight, and we will do our best job to get them answered for you. And then the last thing that I do want to quickly grab is our link to our feedback survey. I know it's been a long night, but we do appreciate your participation, and we want to make sure that we can get better at what we're doing here with these virtual forums. Everything virtual is new to us this last 12 months, right? So we're all working out the kinks. So in the chat box, I'm going to go ahead and type in the feedback survey link. And if you can just click that, it's got a couple of very short questions that are just, you know, picking an answer or checking a box that you can quickly fill out to let us know how we did. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like. At the very end, you can type in any kind of response you'd like to leave extra comments. So check your chat box here and click that link to do our feedback survey. We really appreciate your time and effort and energy. It's 9:03. I know we're all hungry, maybe tired. Make sure you get yourself something to eat and drink. We really appreciate all your time and your attention and effort to be here tonight, because this was a choice and you didn't have to. That goes for the candidates and audience members. So we really appreciate your support. We're trying to do all we can to make sure we can inform, educate, and activate our community members. With that, I
Gina?
can, yes.
I wanted to offer an opportunity, perhaps after we end the recording, if people want to stay for an extra 10 minutes. I noticed that we've got 2 other candidates in the room. And since we've got voters, it might be a great opportunity to give Monica Gordon, who's running for Prairie State, a chance to say hello, and Veronica Franklin, who's running for District 159, to introduce herself to the room. We weren't able to offer forums for those 2 races, but certainly they're all on our ballots. So we wanted to offer them a chance to say hello. So
sure, I could definitely do that. Yeah, if you want to hang out for a few moments here, I'll go ahead and stop the recording. We'll say goodnight, and then we'll still stay on and let them use our platform to talk to you all if you'd like to stay on. So good night, everybody, and have a great evening. Get some sleep. Be back tomorrow at 5 o'clock if you would like to join us for School District 163's forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Good night.